Happy New Year, everyone. Today we'll be exploring Azure OpenAI real-time API, using which you can create a voice bot which provide an instant response or a real-time response, not like text to speech or speech to text conversion, where it usually takes more time. Nowadays, you would have seen that most of the organization they use chatbots as their primary customer contact or customer support. But using the OpenAI real-time API, now you can use the voice bot as your primary customer support, where the customers can get a human-like response when they're calling. However, the problem is this LLM is trained on the public data. But to use it for a specific organization, this LLM should provide a result based on the private data. So in this video, I'll show step-by-step deployment of Azure services where we'll train the LLM on the private data and then use it with a backend application using the Python and the front-end web application using the React. So let's start. I have created a new repository where the application code is saved, using which we'll communicate with the real-time APIs. And this code is taken from Azure samples. And so this is the Azure samples repository, AI search, OpenAI, RAG audio, from where I have taken the code. However, you'll see that there are a lot of different folders. And if you look at the architectural diagram, the different Azure AI services will be deployed, like Azure OpenAI Real-Time API, Azure AI Search Service, which will be used by the middle tier, which is a Python application, where the RAG, authentication instructions and the config are saved. And then there is a React application, which is a web application, using which we'll communicate with the real-time API. So this application code I have taken from here and then done the customization. However, the problem here is that using the Azure Developer CLI and the Bicep, it deploys the infrastructure also, like all the Azure resources. You have to just run AZD up and everything will be deployed. But it's not a good way to learn something. So in my repository, what I'm doing is I'll be deploying all the Azure services manually and then do the import and vectorization of the data on them, which is a private data. And finally, in this application, I'll use the API and then deploy the application. I hope that will be a good learning for you. So here I have defined the different steps. You have to create OpenAI service in US East 2 region. So there are few prerequisites or the caveats which needs to be taken care of, because Azure OpenAI real-time API is available only in US East 2 and Sweden Central region. But if you want to use the real-time API and the embedding models, we need to deploy in US East 2 region. So let's start. I'll log into Azure portal now. And let's look for OpenAI, Azure OpenAI. Let's deploy the OpenAI service. I'll create a new resource group, RG demo, and let's choose the region East US2. I'll name it as Shalender Demo AI01 and pricing tier as standard S0. Next, for this project, I'm not going to use any network security. So all networks, next tags, no tags for here, and create. So running the validation is complete. So create the application. So the deployment will start now, and I'll pause the video and we'll be back once the deployment is done. So the deployment is successful. Let's go to resource. So Azure OpenAI service is deployed now. Now to deploy the different models, we need to go to Azure AI Foundry. So let's click here, which is Azure AI Studio previously. Now it's called as Foundry. And in the shared resources, if we'll go to the deployment, there's an option of deploy models. So first let's deploy the base model, which is GPT-4o real-time preview. So this is an audio generation model and it provides a real-time APIs. So let's select this, and it's available in East US too. So let's deploy it. So now GPT-4 or real-time API is available. So this is the URI and this is the key, which we'll use in the application. So now let's go back to Azure portal and create a Azure AI search. Now this a real-time API will provide the audio generation, but we need to train it on the private data. And for that, we need AI search so that the indexing and vectorization of the data can be done. So let's look for AI search. And in Azure AI services, there is an AI search, create the service. I'll use the same resource group, RG demo, and name it as Shy Demo Search 01. And let's use the region as East US 2. Let's change the tier, and standard S2 is available. I'm going to delete it once I'm done with the demo, so it's all good. Let's select it. Next is scale. We are not scaling anything. We'll just leave it as 1. Networking, it will be open for public, and review and create. I don't want to deploy anything in parallel. There are few services which needs to be deployed for the vectorization of the data, but I want to show how you can understand what's missing, and we'll go step by step, and whatever is missing, we'll go back, we'll deploy that service, then use it again. If there is a missing authentication, we'll provide that authorization or authentication and then try again. So you will understand how these resources will be integrated with each other. I'll pause the video and we'll be back once this deployment is complete. It took around 10 minutes and now the Azure AI service is deployed. So let's go to the resource, and we are in the Azure AI service now. There are no indexes or the indexes which are created, and no data sources. So instead of creating them separately, let's go to overview, and there is an option of import and vectorize data. So let's click here. So now we have to set up a data connection. To set up a data connection, it can be Azure Blob Storage, Data Lake, Cosmos DB, SQL, Table Storage, or Fabric. So we'll be using Azure Blob Storage, but we haven't created Azure Blob Storage. So let's create Azure Blob Storage first. So let's look for storage accounts and create a new storage account. I'll use the same resource group, RG demo, Shalinder ST AI search 01. I hope it's available. And the region, because we are deploying everything in US East 2, so let's use that region. And standard, we want LRS, that should be sufficient, and nothing else. All the networking, everything by default is okay. And storage is a public endpoint service, so by default it will be available publicly. So let's create it. Storage account is created. Now let's go to the resource, which is storage account, and in the data storage, let's go to the containers. I'll create a new container where I'll save the 2 PDF files on which we will train our LLM. So let's create a container. Let's name it as content, create. And in this content creator, I'm going to upload 2 files. So browse for files, and let's go to downloads. So there are 2 files. One is real estate guide for Victoria, Australia, and another one is driving handbook for Vic Roads, which is Victoria driving handbook. Though this is publicly available, but I want my LLM to provide answers only from these PDFs. So let's open this and upload. So both the files are uploaded. Now we have a storage account where we have uploaded the private data. And we have to use this storage account as a data connection with the Azure AI search service. So let's go back to the search service, import and vectorize data, Azure Blob Storage. So this is my subscription and this is the storage account which we have created. Let's click on the content. This is the blob container which we have created. Now, instead of the API, I want to authenticate between these resources using managed identity, which is system assigned managed identity. So let's click on next. However, we haven't deployed it, but let's see. So it's not even enabled on your service. So first what we have to do is go back to search service, look for identity, click on identity, enable the system assigned managed identity. So in the backend, system assigned managed identity is a service principal which is created. So, and then go to Azure role assignments. And there are two roles which needs to be assigned. First one, to the whole resource group, I'm assigning this RG demo. So the first one is storage blob data reader, so that it can read the data which is in the storage account, save it. And another one is cognitive service user, so that it can use the cognitive service to train on that data. Same resource group, and look for cognitive OpenAI service, cognitive service, OpenAI. Okay, go slow a bit. OpenAI user. Let's save this. So these two role assignments are needed so that AI service can communicate with Azure data storage. This will take a minute or so to reflect here, but let's go back to Azure AI service. Import and vectorize data. Click on storage account selected, blob container, authenticate, next. It's validating data source connection. Looks like it's working this time, so that's good. Perfect, it worked. Now we have to vectorize the text using the Azure OpenAI service, but we have only deployed one model, which is real-time API model. But for vectorization, we need an embedding model. So let's go back to our AI Foundry or AI Studio and deploy a new model. Deploy base model. Let's look for embedding. And there are three options. These two are new ones because these are embedding 3. And let's choose the small one. Confirm and deploy. So this embedding model is deployed now. Now let's use this model using the Azure AI service. And that's the reason we have provided cognitive search OpenAI authentication. So let's go back. Let's try again. Import and vectorize data. Blob storage. Container. Authenticate using managed identity. And this time it should work easily. Perfect. We have to provide the model. So Azure OpenAI service, which we have deployed. And now we have embedding 3 model. And I'll use the system assigned managed identity. I acknowledge the connection, that there will be some charges. So we are not using the images, so let's leave this option. In the advanced, we are using the semantic ranker so that the semantic search can be enabled, and we are running this only once. So next. So let's name it as anything or just leave it as default for now, but you can name it as the way you want it. So create it. And start searching. So let's wait for around 2 to 3 minutes so that it will first break the data into chunks and then convert into the numerics or the vectors and then create an index on it. So I'll pause the video and we'll be back once it's done. Now you can see that the vector indexing has been done. It's broken into 211 documents. This is the storage space, vector index size, and everything. All these details are here. Now because we have uploaded the files related to driving and real estate. So let's look for driving and see if the index has worked or not. And perfect, it's providing the information because it's completely filled with driving, so it has different locations. So all good, it's working. Now we have Azure AI service as well as Azure OpenAI service with the real-time API ready. Now what we have to do is we have to use it in our application so that we can see a live demo. So if we'll go to this repository which I have created, which you'll find in the description of this video. So what you have to do is either clone it or download it. I have already done it. So there are different folders. First one is app folder. In the app folder, there is a backend and a front end application. Backend application is a Python application. So if you click on app.py, so it shows the integration between different services as well as the system message. System message is where you bound your API or restrict your API so that it only answers the question based on the information which it gets from our AI search tool. So, and it should provide the grounding files too. So all this information in the RAG tools it's provided. So what it should search, and it should report the grounding. So which file it has used to provide this information so that it's not fluffing around. And RMTY is is where all the integration and everything is happening between these services. You can go through all these files. I have picked all these files from Azure samples, made some slight changes and customization um, for myself. And then comes the front end. In the front end, there is index.html. It's a React page. So go to the source, and there is app.tsx where you can provide the logo and all those details. Index.css where the colors and everything you can define. So now if we'll go back to repository, and in the readme file there is an option that after creating all these services you have to deploy this application. In the deploy this application, what you have to do is you have to .env file you have to create in the backend, and all these values needs to be provided. So let's copy this, go back to our backend. In the backend, let's create the file .env, and let's copy paste this. So first one is Azure OpenAI endpoint. So let's go back to portal, real-time API, or for the OpenAI, you can go to Azure portal directly, OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, go here and provide the URL, which is the endpoint. So this is the endpoint. Copy it and provide it here. Now we have a real-time deployment. Let's go back to Foundry, and you will see the deployment name is GPT-4o real-time preview, which is specified already here, but we have to provide the API key also. So let's go here, copy this key and provide it here. Don't worry about the keys. I'll delete all the resources before uploading this video. So now there are 3 different voice types. So let's select Alloy here, but you have the option of using Echo, Alloy and Shimmer. It's how soft the voice is. So let's use the medium one, which is Alloy. And then we have to provide the Azure AI search endpoint. So let's go back to Azure portal again, look for AI search, click here, and this is the URL. So let's copy it here. This is search endpoint, search index. So what is the index name? So you have to go to the indexes. You will see that this is the default index which was created. So let's copy the name. and then the search API key. So for the key, you have to go to the keys, and these are the management keys. However, what we want is the query key, which you can copy from here. Copy this key, provide it here. Now the search semantic configuration, we need the configuration of the index. So let's go to the indexes, click on our index which we have created, go to the query options, and the semantic configuration is the name of the index hyphen semantic hyphen configuration. So let's copy this. So name of the index hyphen semantic hyphen configuration. Let me quickly check if there is any spelling mistake. Semantic configuration, all good. So search identifier is chunk ID, and we are using title, chunks, text vector, and true. Search using the vector query, true, and then the tenant ID. Let's copy the tenant ID, if it's available from here or not. It only provides the subscription ID here. So let's go to enter ID. And this is my tenant ID. Let's copy it, provide it here, and all good. Save. To start this application, but because we want to start both the backend and the front end application, so there is a script which is created, which is start.ps1. First, it's restoring the npm packages or installing any required packages which are defined in the backend as the requirement.txt, all the packages. And after that, it's starting the front end. If it's failing, it's providing the result, or starting the backend, both. So let's go to this folder. And now, so PowerShell command, all this information is provided in the repository README. So after this, you have to run this command. So run this. So it's creating a virtual environment for Python, which is recommended. So there is no problem with the dependencies, because here we have very specific versions which are defined, as you can see. So if another version is installed on the system, then it can create a problem. So now everything will be managed within this virtual environment. So soon it will start the deployment. Now it is installing the dependencies from requirements.txt. So looks good till now. So now, as you can see, it's restoring the front end npm packages, and then it will start the front end as well as the back end. So it's building the front end and it will start the back end. So now front end is good. So now it's starting the back end, and perfect. Now you can run the application on this URL, which is localhost 8765 port number, which is defined in the application.py, I believe. There you go. It's defined here. It runs on 8765 port number. So let's go to our browser, copy this, and perfect. You will see that this page is a bit different because I have used my own logo and some different text as compared to what Azure uses. So their page is something like this. But I've made some customization so that it looks different. And I have provided some different information like Vic Roads driving rules and Vic Roads and Victoria real estate assistant. And it's trained on the personal data. So let's test this and see if it provides the rounding files and the information which we are looking for. Hello.
Hello, how can I help you today?
What is the speed limit in the shared zone?
The speed limit in shared zones is 10 kilometers per hour, or as indicated on the shared zone sign, and you must give way to pedestrians in these areas.
And perfect, you can see, and it is providing information from the index file, and it's providing us the grounding files also. And it's not providing the whole file information, it's just providing that information which it has pulled from the indexing. And that is perfect. Let's try another one for the another file. What is buying off the plan property?
Buying off the plan property means purchasing a house or unit before the building works are completed, often relying on the
Perfect. See, now this time it's providing the grounding file, that real estate information, and it's providing about off the plan information. And it's providing an instant response. There is a little bit of lag, which is understandable because it has to look for that indexing of information. But still, it's very instant, and you can use this real-time APIs with your private data in your customer support. So you can register your phone number, and if a customer is calling on that number, and first human like response can be from the voice bot. So that's all I wanted to show in this video. I hope you liked it. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.